Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and in this video, I'm going to do a review of the audiobook called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, who is an ESFP jumper. Now, this book is really good because it's a leadership book, and basically, this is all the NI that Jocko Willink has discovered throughout his life working in the US Navy SEAL, and you can really see him learn how to use the Ni+Fi and the Ni+Te. He also talks about different paradoxes that exist at one time in order to be an effective leader. Now, in my opinion, it's a pretty good audiobook. It's not the best one I've listened to, but it's pretty solid. And I took some notes on some of the concepts I've learned while listening to this audiobook. And the first one is, make simple plans, not complex. So the good thing about having an NI concept is that it can be applied to multiple different industries. And for him, even though he was in the military, he was able to give this advice to people working in the business world. So for example, in the example that he gave in this scenario, he was talking about one company that had a very complex compensation plan. And it was so complex that the people working in the company had no idea how it works. Their paycheck would fluctuate on a month-to-month basis, and they have no idea what it would cost them to make more money and what it would cost them to make less money. As you can see, this can affect the morale of the people working for that company. And basically what Jocko Willink is trying to say here is that you want to make it so simple that when people look at the compensation plan, then it's straightforward. And this goes for any plan at all when you're working in a team scenario. Now, this concept is also very interesting because it's very NITE. And I think someone with TI might make an overly complicated plan. And in his case, Jocko Willink is trying to say, don't make it overly complicated, even though you might think it's a work of art. Make it so simple that everyone understands. The second concept that I took notes on, and again, this is in no particular order from the book, and this one is prioritize what will bring the most results. And based on this concept, he also means that if you prioritize what will bring the most result, you will also have to make some sacrifices. And I am someone that is very horrible at prioritizing what will bring the most results because I am the kind of person that don't want to make those sacrifices. And I'm the kind of person that gets the fear of missing out, which is not good. And even when I got typed by Dave, he said to me that I suck at prioritizing, which I agree with him, because this is something that I definitely need to work on. So basically what he's trying to say is that you can't have it all. And oftentimes when you work in an organization and you guys are trying to hit a certain goal, because you have limited resources, then you have to pick and choose the right decision. And this is a very NI concept because it's not very concrete, but at the same time, you could transplant it with pretty much anything in your life. For example, if you're trying to lose weight, I know it's January right now and a lot of people are in the New Year's resolution fitness phase right now. And basically, if you're trying to lose weight, well, you know what? 80% of losing weight is diet, right? So maybe it's better to focus on the diet as opposed to the exercise. If you only have to choose one, of course. The third concept I took notes on is to take responsibility for the result, whether good and bad. So you want to blame yourself, and it's always your fault regardless of what outcome happens. And I think he's trying to teach self-responsibility here instead of pointing fingers. Because if you take self-responsibility for something bad that happens in the organization that you work for, then people will also most likely to mirror your actions and take responsibility themselves. As a result, everyone's taking self-responsibility for what went wrong. And if everyone's taking self-responsibility, everyone is going to take a positive action to fix that problem as opposed to pointing fingers and waiting to find who's at fault. The fourth concept that I took notes on in this audiobook is that under each leader, you should only have 4 to 6 people. And this is one of the best notes that I took on because I was thinking about it. I'm like, how many people should be working under a leadership? And Jocko Willink said that if you have to manage more than 4 to 6 people at one time, you essentially will lose effectiveness as a leader because there's too many people for you to focus on your team. The fifth concept I took notes on is be decisive. So this one is very TE because basically what he's trying to say is that you need to move because when you move and you do something, then you're gonna get a feedback as a result. And if you don't execute, there is no feedback. And that feedback is oftentimes very important because you can make tweaks to make whatever it is that you're working on even better. The sixth concept I took notes on is Jocko Willink said that the people working on the front lines are the best people to lead because they have the most experience and the most knowledge. And this makes perfect sense because you oftentimes have people working in the top office and they have absolutely no clue how the operations work because they are just working in their cushy office job. And the person working in the front lines, they know everything that they're dealing with, whether that be customers, coworkers, and all the bad things that happen usually happens in the front lines. So basically, he's trying to say that if you want to promote someone to be in a management role, make sure that they've had a chance to work in the front lines before, so they know exactly what's going on in the company from the place that gets the most action. The seventh concept that he talks about in the book is discipline equals freedom. And this is pretty much his main message in this book, and also in all his consequent books that he's written, and also when he makes a podcast or goes on interviews. And basically, he's trying to say that if you are disciplined, then you have the freedom to be creative. One example that he made before when I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast was he told Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan is disciplined at researching and taking notes on being a comedian, then he has the freedom to go on stage and be the funniest guy ever because he had the discipline to do the research on the back end. This also goes with fitness. If you are disciplined and you work out, you eat healthy, then as you get older, you still have the freedom of movement to do the things that you want to do, and you are not going to be restricted because of health reasons. Same goes for money. If you are disciplined at saving up money, guess what? You have the freedom to move and make better decisions because you don't have any financial constraints. The eighth concept I took notes on is it's okay to show emotions. So basically, Jocko Willink said that you are still human and showing emotions is completely normal. What you don't want to happen is for you to lose your temper. So he said, instead of losing your temper, show your frustrations instead, because that makes you more human, and the people working under you can see that you are frustrated and they will want to fix the problem. From here, Jocko Willink started talking about different paradoxes that need to exist at one time. For example, it's important to be confident but not arrogant. He also said it's important to be brave but not reckless. And what he means by that is if you are reckless, that means you are sacrificing people or you are sacrificing resources. So he said by being brave, just keep in mind that take action while minimizing the amount of loss that you might have from a resource perspective, and make sure that people don't get hurt. He said it's important to be competitive but gracious in losing. So you want to be a gracious loser as opposed to a poor loser. He said it's important to be aware of your limitations. That way you can work with others that can compensate for your limitations. He also said it's important to get close with your subordinates, but not close enough that they forget that you are in charge. And if I were to interpret what that means, basically, I think if you work for any organization, it's okay to have Christmas parties and get together with people and get to know them at a more personal level, but then you don't want to go to their house and hang out every weekend, have a beer and whatnot. So maintain that working relationship, but you can socialize on special occasions. And the last concept that I took notes on is to ask questions to the person you are talking to make them realize what the answer is instead of telling them what the answer is. People don't really learn if you tell them the answer. Most people learn when they figure out the answer themselves. And that's what Jocko Willink is trying to say. And this concept is often used in negotiations or in sales because you definitely want to get the other person to eliminate their own objections so that you can get to the answer that you're looking for. Anyways, that's about it for the audiobook review of Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I think, again, it's a decent book to listen to, and I do recommend it to people who is off this function stack. So if you are an ESFP especially, but it also will help those who are ISFPs, ENTJs, and INTJs. If you share some of his functions, it's also good. So if you have NI or SE, you would be able to relate to some of his concepts, or if you have FI or TE, you can also relate to some of the concepts that he's teaching in the book. And again, I really feel like in general, it's good to learn from people that has the same function stack as you. But even if they don't have the same function stack as you can still pull out a few tools that you can use to enhance your life. So in this case, in this book, I don't share all the same function stack as Jocko Willink, but I definitely learned a few concepts that I can apply to myself to better my life moving on to the future. One last thing before I wrap up this video, I think that discipline equals freedom. After giving it more thought, this is a very EP concept, right? But I think for me, as someone with FI and SI, I think instead of discipline equals freedom, I think it's better to say routine equals freedom. Anyways, I'll talk about that in a future video.